Hello, this is Johnita with Leah's Prayer, and it is Wednesday Hump Day, y'all. We are almost done with the week. I pray that you have had a good day. I know mine started off extremely early, but God gave me the energy that I needed to complete it. I wanted to talk to you all about discernment and deception. So I know last week I posted on discernment, and earlier this week I posted an excerpt from the book Tortured for Christ by Richard Wurmbrand. Richard Wurmbrand is also the founder of Voice of the Martyrs, also known as VOM. And that organization is dynamic. For those of you who have never heard of it, I would recommend that you Google it. This organization actually sends aid, resources, and assistance to believers who are in restricted nations. So I would recommend that, as well as looking at their conferences. And if you have the ability to go to a conference, I definitely would. I had the privilege of going to two and hear the firsthand testimonies of believers who were persecuted for their faith in Jesus Christ. It was not only encouraging, but it was very eye-opening, as those of us here in America or in the West are not facing that type of persecution. So my recommendation is get the book Tortured for Christ, and then also look up VOM. I think that you will be very pleased. That being said, the actual excerpt, and I'm going to read it from the book that I posted, was: "The language of love and the language of seduction are the same. The one who wishes a girl for a wife and the one who wishes her for only one night both say the words, 'I love you.' Jesus has told us to discern between the language of seduction and the language of love, and to know the wolves clad in sheepskin from the real sheep." The way to do that is through discernment, and that goes back to the post from last week. So discernment is like the careful examination of a thing. It's digging deep into it to make a distinguishing difference, right? So discernment, according to the post, and it was actually a quote from Charles Spurgeon, states, "Discernment is not knowing the difference between right and wrong. It is knowing the difference between right and almost right." So in the book of Hebrews, he says that, and this is the 5th chapter and the 14th verse, it says, "But the strong meat belongeth to them that are full of age, even those who by reason use having their senses exercised to discern both good and evil." So when it talks about their senses being exercised, they have a trained ear and mind to be able to determine what is good from what is evil. Now, when we talk about right from almost right, what he is basically saying is this: you can be telling the truth, but when someone puts a little bit of a lie in it, it makes the entire thing untrue. A trained ear is able to discern when someone has put a tinge of untruth into something. The Bible calls for us to study to show ourselves approved workmen unto God, that needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Now the question is, why is that? It is because Jesus knew that in the times in which we are currently living, that there would be many false teachers. There would be a great apostasy, or a turning away from the truth. The way for the believer to not fall prey to that is to have studied the word of God and to begin to apply that and have their senses trained to be able to hear when someone is saying, "I love you because I want you for a wife," versus "I love you because I want you for a night." When you go to the book of Jude, it talks about that there were men that crept in unaware. They were false teachers, and turning people aside. And then you also see that in the book of 2 Timothy, where he talks about confronting the apostasy and false teachers. Remember, in the last days, deception will be great. There will be a seduction of the church. And actually, in the book Tortured for Christ, the passage, or that excerpt that I wrote, was actually in regard to the church was being deceived. Believers, be as the Bereans talked about in Acts 17:11, because they were more noble than the rest in that they did this one thing. They heard the word, they received it with gladness, but they went back to check to make sure that the things that they were told were actually true. Our job as believers is to receive it, to go back and check it, so that we are not deceived. None of us want to be the one that is caught with the man who only wished her for one night. You are the bride of Christ. Believers, seek his face, study his word, stand firm on his word, because Jesus is on his way back. That is my encouragement to you today. As time moves on, and we know that the return of Jesus Christ is imminent, we're going to see a lot of the prophetic things stated in the Bible coming to pass more frequently and more rapidly. So, while there is yet time, and while it is yet day, read, pray, stand firm. He's on his way back. Just hang on a little bit longer. Much love to you, and as always, as I've always said, and I'll say it again, that we are to live a life that is pleasing to Christ, and that we are to let our light so shine that men may see our good works and glorify our Father who is in heaven. Many blessings to you. Until next time. Goodbye.